Good evening, everybody. Much has been said about me in the introduction. But in reality, I'm quite the opposite. Actually, I've studied in the monastic schools for a number of years, but what I have gained doesn't sync with the number of years I spent. So anyway, I have been doing these odd jobs here and there. I don't really teach in an institutional setting. So basically, I'm here at Vana to avail these wellness facilities, being a sick person myself. So when I'm here, so just offering something towards what Vana and Vana Foundation is trying to do. So coming to the point, so actually the reason why I chose this text, Bodhisattva Chara Avatara, translated as the way of the Bodhisattva, is because from the very surface level, even from the very surface mundane level, Vana is doing and striving to help others. And I thought that this will really encourage and give more confidence to the people who are working to help and benefit others. Because Bodhisattva Chara Avatar, way of the Bodhisattva, is how the Bodhisattvas live their life. So the main thought and action of the Bodhisattva is to benefit others, not just provide temporary benefits, but ultimate benefits to help other beings know the truth. Because only through knowing the truth, according to Buddha Shakyamuni, one can achieve temporary and ultimate happiness or benefit. So, according to Buddha's teachings, so according to Shakyamuni Buddha, and we believe that at least 4 Buddhas have appeared in the past, and about 1,000 will appear in the future. So all these Buddhas in one voice said that we have all beings, so not just human beings. In Buddhism, we believe in different forms of life. So no matter whatever form of life one is in, everyone, all beings have 2 or 3 things in common. One is all beings want to be happy, want to be satisfied. So want to have positive things. So positive causes and conditions. Not a single being wishes to be unhappy, to be sad, to have pain and suffering. So in that respect, all beings are equal. So that's how in Buddhism, especially in the Mahayana, His Holiness the Dalai Lama calls the Sanskrit tradition. In that tradition, view, that's how the equality of all beings is explained. Second is, in the Mahayana tradition, all beings have this potential, the innate, basic potential to become enlightened, to be happy. Not just temporarily happy, but happy forever, to have everlasting happiness. So all beings have that seed, or that these days we call it the right, the right to happiness. But there is this innate potential for happiness. So the name is a beautiful, beautiful name has been given to this, called the Tathagata Garbha, or the Buddha nature. So whatever, since all beings want to be happy, and all beings have the potential to be happy, then what Buddha taught is to how to, the methods to be happy, to achieve happiness. In order to achieve happiness, one should know the basis of happiness. So that is very important. Without establishing the basis of happiness, then trying to seek happiness will be kind of a waste of time. I think so. It will be a waste of time. So first, in Buddhism, in the sutras and the commentaries called the Shastras, the basis of happiness, the basis of truth, the truth, it's called the truth, or the basis of happiness or enlightenment, whatever we call it. So that is being taught extensively. So once you find the basis, once you find the basis and have developed confidence and conviction in the basis of happiness, then you apply the method to reach to that state in order to attain that happiness. Then there's the method. So that's why in the first, it's called, philosophically, it's called establishing the view first. It's very important. Without the view, then we don't know what we are doing. So then it will be like walking, with eyes closed. So one needs to open one's eyes to the truth, the basis of happiness or enlightenment. Then apply the method. And in that method comes what, Tashi, Dr. Tashi Coleman mentioned. There's the three things we can do. There are three things. There are only three things, just to sum up. Hearing, contemplation, and meditation practice. Basically, meditation is a bit, how would I say, narrowed form of, the third method is called practice. So meditation is just one of them. Well, there's so many methods. When we say practice, whatever you do that is aimed at getting to the truth or the basis of happiness is practice. This is, meditation is one of those practices. Then view, meditation, or the practice. And in order to support that, then you have to, apply proper, action, physical behavior. So we are talking about this discipline. Basically, discipline is very important. Without discipline, you have to have a system. In the ultimate sense, system is not necessary. There's no system. It is, an obstacle. But relatively, in order to get to the ultimate or the absolute, relatively, we need to follow the system. That's why, we have this system. So we talk about three systems. We can say systems in Buddhism. The system of discipline. It's also called the precept or the training of discipline, training of meditation or the training of mind, and training in wisdom. So there are three systems. So these are all explained in the text. So in the teachings of the Buddha, categorically there are two kinds of teachings. We're not going to the. I'm not going to go into the third one. So the sutra and the shastra. Okay, sutra is the teachings, the words, the teachings given by Buddha himself, spoken by Buddha. It's called Buddha Vachana. So, talking about the teachings of the Buddha, it is believed that, after Buddha, he was born Siddhartha Gautama, prince, and he left the palace, went in search of truth because of, seeing, old age, sickness, death. So, because of that, he wanted to find a solution to how to deal with that, how to transcend or go beyond that, because there's no way to escape.
I would really recommend everyone to take notes, because these are all progressive sessions, and then the course will build upon. So please do take notes. Thank you.
Okay. So the sutra is the teaching, that spoken by Buddha himself. And my teacher, Dzongsa Khyentse Rinpoche, and he always says that, when Buddha gave the teachings, he was born Siddhartha Gautama, and, he left the palace and finally attained Buddhahood, realized the truth in entirety underneath the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, Magadha. And after that, generally, especially in the Tibetan scholars, they believe that Buddha turned the wheel of Dharma on 3 different occasions. So he gave his discourse, major discourses, not the small discourses and teachings, but the major discourses on 3 important occasions, 3 major occasions. So first, and when he gave the teachings, it was not that he gave the teachings because he was so, fully realized and he was so knowledgeable and well educated. That was not the reason why Buddha gave teachings. He gave teachings out of compassion, because he saw that all beings have that potential to have happiness, to attain happiness. And all beings need happiness. They want happiness. They are looking for happiness. So he saw that. So because of that, he gave the teachings. And when somebody gives teachings, when a teacher gives teachings, he cannot give, one teaching to everybody. Not everybody can follow one method, one teaching. So he gave different teachings aimed at different audience. So different mindset, different inclinations, so different level of understanding. So different kinds of elements, different kinds of disposition, you have, the beings have. So based on that, Buddha gave teachings on 3 major occasions. So in the first teachings, because in order to understand this, we need to have some kind of, introduction to how, Buddha gave teachings, the introduction to the teachings Buddha gave. So in the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, it's honorifically, respectfully called. So in the first discourse, Buddha taught the 4 noble truths. So Four Noble Truths. The truth of the suffering, truth of the origin of suffering, the cause of suffering, the truth of the cessation of suffering, and the truth of the path or the method that leads to the cessation of suffering. So that was what Buddha taught in there. Basically, what he taught was the interdependence. Things exist by means of depending on each other. So there's nothing that exists independently on its own. So interdependence means there's cause and effect. So things are born from causes and conditions. So there's this result. So when there's the gathering of causes and conditions together, then if there is no obstacle, then there is the result, the effect. So basically, Buddha taught the cause and effect. For example, the Four Noble Truths. The first noble truth, the truth of the suffering, is the result, is not the cause. It comes from its corresponding cause. So the truth of the suffering, there's a different kinds of suffering. There's a suffering upon suffering. For example, the animals they have usual suffering of old age, sickness, and so on. But upon that, there are other sufferings. So there's suffering upon suffering. The suffering of change. We experience, even human beings experience the suffering upon suffering sometimes. Just to give a simple example is you have a headache, and before you recover from a headache, you have a stomach ache and so on. That's the simple one. There are more serious ones in different forms of life. For example, some animals have that. So they have this usual suffering of samsara, but upon that, they go through the suffering of being used for beast of burden and so on. Then suffering of change, we all have this. The progression of our life is suffering of change anyway. We are born, then we grow, we get old, and this is the suffering of change. We experience that. But we don't take it seriously. That is the problem. And then this all-pervasive suffering. That is the most important suffering to understand in order to generate this longing to seek the truth, seek happiness, to find the basis, to get to the basis of happiness. In other words, it's called renunciation anyway. So this is the all-pervasive suffering. All-pervasive suffering is the suffering of impermanence. Everything, all compounded things are impermanent. There's no compounded thing that is not impermanent, that lasts forever. It's not there. So basically what, as pointed out in one of my teacher's book, What Makes You Not a Buddhist. So it is up to date, It has been up to date. Buddha said this 2,500 years ago, more than 2,500, I think 2,800 years ago, something like that. But still, things are impermanent. Nothing has become permanent. No compounded thing, no composite thing has become permanent. So it is impermanent. We need to really reflect on that, understand that in order to, because if we don't understand that, then we think that somewhere else, even if it is not here, somewhere else there is a lasting, lasting thing, everlasting thing. There's a permanent thing somewhere. For example, we believe in different forms of life. In the God realm, for instance, so we think that there the happiness is unchanging and everything is, everlasting. It's not that. It is compounded, so it will fall about. It is time bound. So it may last longer, but it's not permanent. So we need to understand, in order to develop this interest or the enthusiasm or the longing to seek the truth, and that is called renunciation. That is very important. That's why the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, or the first discourse, was to first, how to say, make people generate that longing to seek the truth, cause and effect. Okay, know the suffering. And in order to be free from suffering, in order to have this, in order to have that wish to be free from suffering, one needs to know that one is suffering. One is going through this suffering. One has pains and sufferings and dissatisfactions, agony, these kind of things. So only then one will have this wish, longing to be free from suffering. And in order to be free from suffering, suffering is just by cutting. For example, if you want to get rid of the poisonous fruit, then you need to cut the root. You have to uproot the tree. Just by cutting the branches or plucking the fruit will not work. Maybe temporarily it's like a painkiller. It might work like a painkiller, but it's not long lasting. So it's not everlasting happiness. So it's not ultimate happiness. So one needs to uproot that. So I'll come to that actually when we go through this text. This will come in detail how we do it. So abandon the cause of suffering. So basically the cause is the ego clinging. We will come to that anyway. We have to deal with that. So the ego clinging to the self, and from clinging to the self comes all kinds of negative emotions, neutral emotions, positive emotions, leading to the accumulation of action. Action brings the rebirth. Once you have the rebirth, then there is the birth, old age, sickness, death, and so on. And then all kinds of related sufferings. Then what do you do in order to abandon the cause of suffering? You need to apply the path, the method. And then there are so many different kinds of method. So one of the most extensive and vast and profound method is explained in this one, in the Bodhisattva Charya Avatara, the way of the Bodhisattva. So after applying that, then the suffering, the cause of suffering will generally, be purified or dispelled or uprooted. And when the cause is uprooted, then there is no result. And finally, you will reach a state where you don't suffer, because there is no cause of suffering. And that is called the cessation of suffering. It's called nirvana, it's called enlightenment. So in order to reach to that state, then so many texts have been written, and Buddha gave so many discourses and teachings. There are so many different kinds of sutras, and then there are commentaries or shastras. And then, as I mentioned earlier, not everybody, one teaching is not good enough for everybody. So there are some people who can, who have higher faculties, higher understanding, higher, greater kind of courage. Then for them, then, you can't teach like a university student, the pre-primary. You can't teach the subjects you teach the pre-primary students to a university student. So second turning of the wheel of Dharma. So in the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, or the second discourse, Buddha went deeper into what he taught in the first turning of the wheel of Dharma. So in the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, which happened in Rajgir, in present-day Rajgir, Bihar, near Nalanda. So he taught emptiness, or prajna paramita, it's called, the transcendental wisdom. And so that actually really formed the basis of the, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, the Nalanda tradition or the Sanskrit tradition, the Mahayana, so to speak, the Mahayana tradition. So there Buddha taught, the more subtle and the more profound form of the interdependence, the independent arising, cause and effect, in a more subtle way. So we'll come to that when we discuss the text. Anyway, I'm not going to spend much time on this. And then also, he also gave the teachings for the third time, the major teaching for the third time, in many different places. Places like Vaishali, near, some of you might know, you're familiar with one text called Vimala Kirti Sutra. That was taught in Vaishali, and that belonged to the third discourse. In the third discourse, Buddha really talked about differentiating relative and the absolute in order to cut through all kinds of reference. So all kinds of views, all kinds of reference. So, basically non-duality. We'll discuss about that. These are really difficult terminologies. So, so the differentiation of what is ultimate and what is relative, the differentiation of what can be interpreted and what cannot be interpreted. For example, all compounded things are impermanent. That can be interpreted. That is still relative. But, for example, shunyata, emptiness, that cannot be interpreted. It is ultimate. Because it is not compounded at all. So it's not fabricated, or if it's not created by anything. It's not based on, dependent on causes and conditions. So you cannot interpret that. So in that way, Buddha gave teachings on 3 major occasions, and that formed the whole body of the Buddha's teachings, called the sutras. And in India, I don't know, in Nalanda and all those universities, basically there are 3 universities, main universities in India in those days, like Nalanda, Vikramasila, Taxila universities. I don't know whether they studied sutra or not, but in the Tibetan tradition, in the Himalayan tradition, we only study the Shastra, the commentaries written by the later followers of Buddha, like Nagarjuna. Nagarjuna was the founder of that, the Madhyamika, the middle way philosophy. Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, and then Shantideva, and so on. So we study this Shastra, we don't study Sutra, because it is believed that Sutra is not that easy to understand without relying on the commentary. For example, in the Heart Sutra, there's one Heart Sutra, Prajna Paramita Siddha. For a beginner who has not heard about anything, form is emptiness, emptiness is form is no other than emptiness, emptiness is no other than form. What does it mean? you get confused. And at the best, you get confused. The worst, you will understand in a completely distorted manner. So for that reason, we need to rely on the Shastras. And it is believed that in the Tibetan tradition, we believe that if we study the Shastras thoroughly and completely, we can understand the Sutras. So that's why studying Shastra is very important. And in the traditional monastic schools, like scriptural schools and colleges, the study of the inner philosophy begins with the study of Bodhisattvacharya Avatara. So this Bodhisattvacharya Avatara, actually, the teachings Buddha gave, they can be categorized into three. These teachings are categorized into three groups, or called the three baskets of teachings, the Tripitaka. Yes, the Tripitaka, three baskets of teachings, Dene Sum in Tibetan. So there's this Vinaya group, and Vinaya Pitaka, Sutra Pitaka, and Abhidharma Pitaka. So the Vinaya Pitaka is mainly to the subject of the Vinaya Pitaka is the discipline, so outer and inner discipline. Because in order to be able to practice the path, one has to lay the firm foundation of pure discipline. Only only on the basis of pure discipline, one can develop one-pointed concentration, which is called the samadhi, the meditation. And through that, then when one is able to bring the mind under control and have one-pointed focus or concentration, one can look into the nature of mind and the manifestation of the mind itself. In Buddhism, we believe that everything is the manifestation of the mind, is the projection of the mind. So, one can look into the nature of things, nature of phenomena, and the mind. And when one sees the nature of things and experience and really develop confidence, practical confidence in the view, that is called the wisdom actually. So when one sees the reality or the nature or the truth of everything, then one will not be carried away by the appearances, the outer appearances. The problem with us is, as one of the great Indian master, not just a scholar, it's a great practitioner, from Bengali, said to his disciple that it is not the appearance that makes you suffer, that chains you, that binds you. It is the clinging, grasping, getting stuck in the appearance. Since we don't know, because of not knowing the truth, the reality, we get stuck in the appearance. So when once we are able to see the truth, the reality of the appearance, the things, all the things are appearance. So we won't get stuck. That is the benefit. If we don't get stuck, then we are not affected by whatever is happening. We don't have to go anywhere. We don't have to escape to another place to have perfect happiness, to attain nirvana, omniscience, enlightenment, liberation. These are the different kinds of names given to the perfect recognition, understanding, and experience of the truth. So there's the Sutta Pitaka, and then there's that Vinaya Pitaka. Then Sutta Pitaka is mainly for the subject is the training of the mind, and the Abhidharma Pitaka is to explore the different kinds of the enumeration of the phenomena, so that one can discriminate and discern, analyze, and get to the true nature of things. So that's the Abhidharma. That's so the sutra that explains that method is called the Abhidharma Pitaka. So with that short kind of introduction on Buddhism, so let us move on to the text. So Bodhisattva Charya Avatara. Bodhisattva Charya Avatara, as mentioned in the introduction, was written by Shantideva, one of the most celebrated 8th century Buddhist master. He was in the biography said that he was born in a small place in Gujarat, so present-day Gujarat. He was born in Saurashtra. He's supposed to be in Gujarat, and he was born as a prince. And from his early childhood, he was inclined to Dharma. He was compassionate, kind, and always, praying to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And when he attained the age to ascend, I think ascend the throne, to take up the throne, then the night before he was enthroned as the king, actually from the very early age, he had a special connection and devotion to this bodhisattva of wisdom, the embodiment of wisdom, Manjushri. Manjushri is the embodiment of wisdom. So he practiced and prayed and practiced Manjushri, and even had the visionary connection with the bodhisattva Manjushri. So the night before, he was enthroned as a king, then he dreamt of Manjushri, and Manjushri said to him, "Oh, my son, this throne, this seat belongs to me. I'm your teacher. Is it appropriate for you to sit on your teacher's seat?" And then the next morning, he remembered the dream, and he took it that as a sign that he was not supposed to take the throne. So he left his country and traveled to Nalanda University. And there, the abbot of the Nalanda University used to be a Pandita called Jayadeva. From him, he received this ordination. As I mentioned earlier, the discipline. There's different kinds of discipline. Take the ordination of the monk from that master, and he lived there. Outwardly, he studied in the university, but secretly he was receiving all the teachings from his invisible tutor, Manjushri, the bodhisattva of wisdom. So he had perfected everything, and he even wrote few commentaries, but he did not reveal. And outwardly, he pretended that he was doing nothing at the university. He was just eating, sleeping, and going to relieve oneself, toilet, basically. So that was what the other monks found him doing. So they thought that it was really improper and it was a big, enormous negative, karma for him to Shantideva to enjoy the offerings of other people, the sponsors, without doing anything, any virtuous thing, not studying, not contemplating in the monastery. So they wanted to, kick him out, basically, send him out of the monastery. So since he had done nothing wrong, except just, he pretended to be lazy, then there was no way that they can, send him out just like that. So they looked for a plan to send him out. So in those days, actually, in the universities, the students, they have to give a discourse to a big assembly of the, scholars, the abbot, scholars, students, king, even sometimes merchants, devotees. So he was made to do that, give a discourse, and he accepted. Okay, I'll do the discourse. And in order to embarrass him, then they put a really high throne, really, really lofty throne, without any ladder to go up, the staircase to go up. But he came and miraculously and suddenly he was on the throne. And then that took people to surprise, especially the monks who really wanted to kick him out. And then he said, should I recite the teaching that has been already taught by other masters, or a new one? And they told him to do the new one, recite a new one. So he said that actually I have already composed 3 texts. So there is the Shiksha Samucha, the compendium or the collection of advice. That is too long, too long. So, and there is the collection of the sutras, Dokunituba. It's basically the discourses. That is too short. So this Bodhisattvacharya Avatara is neither too long nor too short, but very rich in meaning. So I will recite this one, and he recited this text. And as there are 10 chapters in this text, and as he was reciting the 9th chapter, at some point when he was talking about, reciting the verses on how you directly connect to the truth after all this hearing, contemplation, analysis, and meditation practice, and accumulation, purification, you attain the level of omniscience, and realization. Then at that point, then people began to see Manjushri on top of his head, above him in the sky, and together they ascended. They went up in the air, and then he kept on reciting, and then suddenly, when the text finished, he disappeared. He vanished. So that was kind of, a person, a master, Shantideva was. So he descended actually somewhere else in other parts of India, and people, the monks of Nalanda University found it. So, the Panditas, they collected what he recited, and some Panditas, they found it like 700 verses. 700 verses, and then another group of Panditas, they collected into 1,000 verses. So this as 1,000 verses. So they went to him and monks went to him, and they invited him back, but he declined. So he said that 10 or 1,000 verses. Bodhisattva Charitamrita has 1,000 verses, and the other two texts you will find in a small Niche. How do you pronounce? Niche. Niche. The opening, the holes in there. So he said you will find those texts in there, in his cell, in his room where he was staying. So they found it and they wrote it down. So that's how this text was written. But actually, now when we talk about the text in India, authentication is very important. Whatever text was written, even the teachings of the Buddha has to be authenticated. How do you know that it is authentic, it is valid? So to authenticate the sutras, generally in the Nalanda University, they used to authenticate by means of 5 perfections. 5 perfections. So there's this 5 perfections to determine, whether the sutra was really taught by the Buddha. Is it really valid? So 5 perfection is, there are 2 ways, but relatively at the outer level. So there's the 5 perfections of who is the teacher. In Tibetan, it's Phuntsum Sokpa Nga. Yes, this is called Phuntsum Sokpa Nga, Phuntsum Nga Din. So these 5 qualities, the text should have these 5 qualities. Whatever teaching is given, it should have these 5 qualities. So first is the teacher. Who is the teacher? Who gave the teachings? So in case of the sutra, the Buddha of our fortunate eon is Shakyamuni Buddha, who was born Siddhartha Gautama. So the sutras were taught by, spoken by Buddha Shakyamuni. And when? The time. So it will depend. In the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, Sutra on Four Noble Truths, for instance, was taught, in Varanasi. So after he got enlightened, because in Buddhism, actually, especially, with the dates, we're not very good, I think, to record the dates, the time. So, that time, then to who were the disciples? Mainly the 5 companions who abandoned him. And also there are others. So Koruna de Zambo. Then what was taught? The Four Noble Truths. He taught the Four Noble Truths. So the 5, the teacher, the time, place is Varanasi, Saranath, Deer Park. So for example, the Heart Sutra. The Heart Sutra was taught at Rajgir, in Vulture's Peak. Who taught? Buddha Shakyamuni. How did he teach? He remained in meditation, and then the discourse, the teaching happened between, the conversation between Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva. So that's how this sutra was taught. And where was that it? Rajgir. Who were the disciples? Shariputras, Arhats, monks, and also the Bodhisattvas, and also the invisible audience, like, gods, asuras, Gandharvas, maybe even animals. So that's how, the teaching is validated or authenticated. But in the how is Shastra validated or authenticated? So there are five qualities or five points to validate the Shastra. So the teacher who wrote the Shastra. So Shastra is written by Shantideva. You know who was Shantideva, through the story. So he was a bodhisattva, highly realized and learned Pandita, and also a Mahasiddha, realized being. So this was written by him, experienced from his own learning and experience through the understanding of the sutras as a commentary. So what is the purpose of this sutra, a Shastra? The immediate purpose is to let, the to let the monks of Nalanda University know what is meant by bodhicitta, who is a bodhisattva, what are the attitude and action of the bodhisattva. Basically, talking about 6 paramitas, how to generate bodhicitta and to practice the 6 perfections in order to perfect the bodhicitta. And and which category of the sutra this text belongs? This text belongs to the sutta, Sutta Pitaka, Sutra Pitaka, because it is all about the training, the mind. It's mind training text. That's why it's all about meditation, the practice. So, and this is obviously the sutra teachings, compiled from the words of the Buddha, based on the words of the Buddha, and also based on the earlier commentaries by Nagarjuna and so on. So what is the ultimate purpose of this text? Ultimate purpose of this text is to perfect the bodhicitta and attain Buddhahood. So that's how this, the texts are authenticated in India. I think not just the Buddhist texts. I think even the Jain texts, Hindu texts, they had to do the same way in order to authenticate. That's why, in Tibet, the teachings, the texts written in India were considered valid and authentic from a pure, reliable source. So, anyway, if you have any questions, because it's almost 6:30. Yeah, any questions you have?
What subjects were taught in the university of
Okay. In India, basically, according to, in Buddhism, we talk about, it is believed that in the history, in the Nalanda University, in Nalanda University, the subject students were not just the philosophy, but they also studied medicine and grammar, poetry, arts. In 2005, I think, in 2005, I was in Nalanda to attend one conference And during the conference, a group of Jain nuns also came to make presentation, saying that Nalanda was not just important for Buddhism, but also important for Jainism. So I think comparative religion was also studied at Nalanda University. But the Buddhist texts are mainly the Madhyamika, Prajnaparamita, the 13 great treatises. Those were studied in Nalanda University. I think in those days they also studied Sutra as a reference to understand, the Shastra.
Any correction between Buddhist and Jainism?
I don't know much about that. I think my teacher says that there's many similarities, many similarities. For example, non-violence. I think like compassion at certain level. Yeah, I think so.
All living creatures want to achieve happiness. And in humans, we can do that through knowing the truth, getting to enlightenment. How would the other creatures get that happiness if they are striving also for it? What is their chance of getting?
That is a very good question, and this is addressed it will come in the text though, but that's why it is believed that the human in Buddhism, in all forms of Buddhism, human birth is considered the best birth for dharma practice, to practice the methods in order to get to the truth, to achieve happiness. So other beings, I think it's a bit difficult. They have to, reach to this human level, get to the human level in order to, they have to get human birth in order to fully avail that opportunity to understand and experience the truth, to experience that happiness. Yes.
We live in a very here and now world. And in fact, so much so that most of the time we lose perspective of everything that we have. So, with that same, let's say, bad habit of this here and now world, how quickly can we get to enlightenment? Is my question.
I think now this kind of gathering, getting people to come and listen to the teachings is the first step towards trying to take a step forward. So it will take long time. The habits, they don't go away easily. But at least we make a connection. We create some kind of auspicious condition that one can carry forward. One may not be able to achieve enlightenment in this life or in a few years' time, but since in not only in Buddhism, also in Hinduism, Jainism, I think that there's the reincarnation. So we create that auspicious condition to take it further. But we have to do as much as we can in this form we have. But it will, even if it makes a small impact, it's a great achievement, I think. We have to do the contemplations. We study, we need to do the contemplation. We have to do accumulation and purification, basically, in order to, slowly dilute our habit, our usual habit.
Kempala, I missed one point. Those five qualities and five convictions with which we validate the teachings, are they the same for Shastra's validation or you?
Slightly different. Slightly different. Slightly different.
So for Shastras, I could only capture.
Okay, I'll read from this commentary actually. There are so many actually. In the introduction, it's very long. I'm not going to go through that. So first is the author. Author, the one who composed the Shastra. And what is the text based on? Which Pitaka is it based on? Which words of the Buddha is? So here it is actually based on the sutra. So the Tripitaka, and mainly the Sutta Pitaka. So it's based on Sutta Pitaka. And to which category this text belong to? It belongs to the Mahayana text anyway. It is a Mahayana text. And in the Mahayana, there are two sections. There's the Sutra and Tantra. So it belongs to the Sutra, the causal section. And what is the essential meaning presented in the text is how to way to generate, arouse bodhicitta, and to train in the 6 paramitas or the 10 paramitas, 10 perfections. And what is the purpose of this text, composing this text? In order to benefit, for the benefit of all sentient beings, and especially or particularly to benefit the monks of Nalanda University who were disillusioned with Shantideva. So these are the 5 points to validate Shastra according to the Nalanda tradition. In the Vikrama tradition, they have slightly different. So mainly, I think Takshila University was mainly the Tantra university. So the sutras were studied mainly in Nalanda University, although they studied, Sharvakayana teachings, Mahayana teachings, Vajrayana teachings, and Vikramashila was mainly the sutras. So mainly Sharvakayana and the Mahayana. Third is what is the which category? Yeah, which category? Yeah, I think so. But most popular were three, I think. Yeah, they were Udantamura. They came later on. So Nalanda was completely destroyed in the 12th century, 13th century, from the visitors from somewhere in Central, Asia. Yeah. But actually, Nalanda had undergone so many decline even before that. Because of that decline, there was decline many times. So one of the nuns gave up her vow to save Nalanda, save Buddhism. So from her, after giving me, from her born, two outstanding masters. The elder brother was Asanga, and the younger brother was Vasubandhu. They really spread the teachings of Buddha. But I think that the invading forces, the outer structures and libraries were burnt, mainly in the 13th century. But the decline makes it, I heard that it began as early as 9th century.